Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do my TBR for the winter months. This is generally going to cover everything from November to February, but of course it's not going to be everything I'm going to read because I'm a mood reader. I always pick things up on the side, and I don't know what books I'm going to receive for review, what upcoming releases I'm going to be able to check out, but these are some of my priorities, mostly backlist books that I would like to get to in all the genres that I read, so horror, thriller, science fiction, and fantasy. I'm going to have timestamps down below if you want to jump around, but hopefully you find this interesting. I know I like to know what my fellow booktubers are planning on reading, and then you can kind of plan accordingly if you want to read along. And yeah, I'm really excited. I have a lot of good books coming up. It's really ambitious, but I think I can do it, especially with Christmas coming up. I have a lot of time off work, which means that I get a lot of reading time. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk horror, starting with the books that my Patreon book club are going to be reading. If you don't know, I have a book club over on my Patreon Discord, and every month we read a horror book. However, starting in January, we're actually going to also be adding a science fiction book that we're going to read every quarter. So next year we're going to be reading 12 horror books and 4 science fiction books. If you're interested, I always have a link down below. But for now, we have voted and picked out the books for both November and December, so I'm going to share them here in case you want to join in. For November, the theme that they voted on was vampires. And the book that won is called Dracula's, not Dracula by Bram Stoker, but Dracula's by Blake Crouch and several other authors. This is not an anthology, but actually a novel. I understand it's a collaboration that was done, and essentially it's about an outbreak of vampires at a hospital. It's supposed to be over the top and hilarious. I'm a little nervous because if you follow my channel for a while, you know that funny horror doesn't always work for me, but I'm very hopeful. I, of course, love Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, so I'm interested to check out some of his horror. And no matter what, it's with my book club, so I know it's going to be a lot of fun. Then for December, we're planning on doing a witch theme month, and the book that got voted on for that was The Croning by Lard Barron, who I've never read anything from before, and I don't know too much about this plot. I understand that it's cosmic horror that references some black magic, which I believe is where the witchy angle comes in, and my book club was just really excited. I think there's a lot of fans of Lard Barron's work in the club, so it'll be my first, but hopefully not my last, and either way, you're gonna find out how it went for me once I come back with a review. The Christmas season is always a time where I do a lot of rereading, and again, if you've been following my channel for a while, you're probably not surprised that yes, once again, I'm rereading Nosferatu by Joe Hill. At this point, I'm calling this my favorite horror book, and I reread it every single Christmas. This, of course, is the story of a young girl named Victoria who has the ability to find missing objects. She gets pulled into this crazy story with this villainous character named Charlie Manx who steals away children to Christmas land, and it's just an epic story. It's supernatural. It's actually mostly set during the summer, but it's all about a place called Christmas Land, so it's also very Christmassy. There's references to Christmas music like Jingle Bells, and it's oh so creepy. While I have the physical version, I do honestly always do my rereads on audio because it's narrated by Kate Milgrew, who's one of my favorite narrators, and it's absolutely creepy. Absolutely love it. If you are one of my few subscribers who has not yet checked out this book, I really encourage you to do so. If you have similar taste to me, you will hopefully love this book just as much as I do. Another book I plan to reread is The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. This is a story told over 2 timelines, one being in the present day where there are 2 young girls looking for their mother who has disappeared from their house. It is on a cold, blizzarding day in the middle of nowhere. And then the story is also told back in, I believe, the early 18 or 1900s, where we follow a couple who, after years of trying to have a child, finally had one. However, the story starts out with a terrible accident and the events that follow afterwards. I really liked this story when I first read it. I remember loving the historical angle and not so much loving the contemporary story, or at least not as much. I believe I put this story on my top 10 favorite horror novels, but I'm really due for a reread. I need to see if it actually holds up in my memory and is actually as good as I think it is. I really like grief stories. I really like stories that deal with infertility and desperate parents. And I remember it being pretty creepy. A lot of people will describe this as more of a suspense story, and I know why, but I still remember a few pretty disturbing scenes. So again, I have to see if my memory is failing me or if this is the treasure treasure that I remember it to be. So either way, stay tuned. You will notice also that I'm particularly choosing books that are winter themed because I want to read them all during the cold winter months in Canada here, where we're also blizzarding. Speaking of cold weather books, I also plan to reread Stranded by Bracken McLeod. This book is set, I believe, around the Arctic and follows a group of fishermen whose boat gets stuck, and they begin to have to just struggle for supplies and survival because they are running low on resources. Everyone is getting hungry and more so getting strangely sick. And so when they see something off on the horizon, a group of them decide to go off in order to see if there is something out there that can help them. And the story goes from there. This, as I mentioned, is a reread for me, and I do know where the story goes, but I'm going to keep it brief and just say that it's a book with a very decisive turn, and readers either love that turn or they really hate it. And the fact that I'm rereading it, you can probably guess that I really liked where the book went, and I just would really like to revisit it. I think Bracken McLeod is an amazing storyteller, and yeah, this book is just due for another pass by me. I can't wait to read it again. And my last horror reread that I have tentatively planned is The Shining by Stephen King. And this, you're probably a bit surprised that it's on my list, and I am kind of too. You probably just recently watched my Stephen King TBR, which is more of a loose TBR. I'm not promising to read those books back to back, but just over the next year or two, I would like to check out those books that I listed. And I wanted to read Dr. Sleep, which I mentioned, but I'm tempted to do a reread of The Shining first, even though I remember the story and it's not a really direct sequel. I understand that Danny is an adult by the time you're reading Dr. Sleep, but it's the right time of year to do a reread of The Shining because, again, it's set all during the cold winter months. I think it's set in December, and yeah, if I'm gonna read it, it's gonna happen probably before Christmas, so I'm putting it on the list. And the last two books in the horror thriller category are new to me books. The first one being Cold Skin, which I believe is a zombie story set out in the cold. I really don't know much about it. I have no idea how it ended up on my Goodreads TBR list, but it's one of the books that has been sitting on there for way too long, and I always hold off reading it because I think, no, I want to wait until it's cold outside to read it. So now is the time, and yeah, I'm really excited to check it out. You know I love zombie books. I did a whole recommendation recently on the genre, and yeah, I just cannot get enough of them. And finally, for stabby books, I want to read The Crow Girl, which is actually a thriller rather than horror, but I understand it to be quite gruesome. This is a translated work from a Scandinavian country, possibly Sweden if I check my notes. But this follows a detective who is hunting down the murderer of a young boy who was found in a grisly state. And I want to pick this one up. It ended up on my radar because I want to say Jordaline Reads read it and gushed about it. She loves messed up books, possibly more than I do, and I believe she really likes this one, so I am definitely interested in checking it out for myself. I don't read as many of these gruesome, dark detective stories as I used to. I'm finding myself falling out of love with that subgenre of kind of mystery thrillers, but every once in a while I find one that works so well, and I'm really hoping that this will be one of those. I believe it's set in the cold winter months, which again is why I've been saving it until now, but if I'm going to check it out, if I do complete it, you'll definitely hear about it, and yeah, hopefully it's a winner. I hope I like it. Jordaline and I don't always agree on books, but I love her channel regardless, so we'll see where I land on this one. Now, switching over to science fiction, my top priority the minute that it comes out, I am very excited to read the 9th and final book in the Expanse series, which of course is Leviathan Falls by James S.A. Corey. I did an entire reread this year. I have a whole playlist of Expanse content if you're interested in checking that out. And I am dying to see how this series ends. I have high hopes. I really think that the authors are going to nail it. I know that my expectations are high, but I really think they're going to be met. And I'm just crossing my fingers that I get to read it as soon as it comes out. And yeah, I just cannot gush about that series enough. It is the best new space opera that is coming out. Along similar lines, I'm trying to read through as many 2021 releases, so I'm also interested in reading The Actual Star by Monica Burns. And this, I understand, is a story set over multiple generations, and I actually don't know too much about it. I know it's really long, I know it's really epic. It might even fall into more speculative fiction. I don't know if there's fantastical elements, but I've heard really good things about the author. I have a friend that really likes their work, and yeah, I'm just gonna give it a try because it's a new release and I want to know if it's one of the best. Next, going for some backlist, I really wanted to try some Alistair Reynolds, and so I decided to start with his novella, which is Permafrost, which I understand is about a group of scientists working around the Arctic, and there is time travel involved. That is all I need to know. I don't want to know too much of the plot when it comes to short fiction, but it sounds really fun. I love time travel, and yeah, I'm just excited to check that out. And then definitely I do want to go on to a lot of his longer work, but this is just a really approachable place for me to start. As well, I want to pick up Ancestral Nights by Elizabeth Bear. I just talked about this one in my recent book haul, so I'll try to keep it brief. It's epic space opera that is set in the white space universe, where there is a different way that people travel through space using this white space technology. I got to read the second book in this companion series, Machine, last year, really liked it, and I really do try when I buy books to read them as soon as possible, so hopefully you're going to see a lot of those recent book haul books showing up on TBR videos, and then of course showing up in review videos soon after. So very excited to get to this one sooner than later. And around Christmas, I know that Disney is going to be putting out the next season of The Mandalorian, as well as the new Boba Fett show, and that always gets me in the mood to binge watch all of the Star Wars movies again, but also read some of the books. You may not be aware, I actually do read a lot of the expanded universe. I just don't always talk about them in my videos because I don't think that a lot of people are interested, but I am thinking about doing a whole video on either my top 10 expanded universe books or my recommendations on where to start if you're interested in getting into the Star Wars books. But over Christmas, I'm planning on reading the trilogy, the original Thrawn trilogy that starts with Heir to the Empire, and I've never read these, and I know they're considered to be some of the best, so I'm very excited to get to them. I know they introduce Mara Jade, and yes, these are technically legends now, but I don't care. I love the original stories, and I'm very eager to finally read this beloved trilogy. So yes, this will happen likely around Christmas. I always read a bunch of Star Wars books over the Christmas holidays. Then I want to do a little bit more rereading, and so I'm going to finish out the last two books in the Axiom trilogy by Tim Pratt. I read these a couple years ago and really want to come back. This is a epic space opera story that follows a ragtag team of salvagers who come across a mysterious woman in a ship, and then there's ancient alien technology introduced and aliens, and it is amazing. I reread the first book, had so much fun, and so I do want to finish out my reread by reading the Dreaming Stars as well as the Forbidden Stars, and yeah, I have so much fun with these books. Then from there, I want to do a reread of Ship of Fools by Richard Paul Russo. This is a space opera horror that I absolutely loved. I read it earlier this year, and quite frankly, I just want to read it again. I think it could be a favorite of the year, but I kind of need to know how much of a favorite. Where would it rank if I do some ranking videos at the end? And I'm just really excited to revisit it. Everyone is always asking me for space opera recommendations that involve horror, anything like Alien. And while this is nothing like Alien, this is also some of the best space opera horror I have ever read, and I really do recommend it. I just, yeah, can't wait to get back to it and re-experience the story because it's creepy and dark. Basically, you have these group of people who are on a ship. There are religious fanatics. They come across this other ship. They start to explore it, and things possibly go terribly wrong. But this book is so smart, so well plotted, and yeah, I can't wait to get back to it. And the last book I plan to reread in terms of science fiction is The Relentless Moon by Mary Robinette Kowal, which is the third book in the Lady Astronaut series, which is alternative history that ties in science fiction elements. We follow a space program that is being accelerated to include women much earlier than it actually was. And in this third book, we have one of the characters on the moon, and there is a mystery. There is a possible traitor, and so it's this whole mystery story. I love the representation of eating disorders. This book is really close to my heart, and I basically could just reread it over and over again. This is my second reread of 2021 of this book, and I can't wait to get back to it again. And moving on to fantasy, I have three main priorities. The first one is The Veiled Throne, which is the third book in the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. And this series is epic, historical, Chinese-inspired fantasy. It follows a group of different people trying to gain power, and then once they have power, trying to hold on to it. It definitely has a Game of Thrones feel to it, but it's also very much its own. I love the diversity. I love the Chinese aspects to the story. I love the first two books. I'm very excited to continue on, and then I believe the last book is going to be published next year, so I want to be all caught up in order to experience the finale as soon as it gets published. Love this series, cannot recommend enough. It's definitely my top 5 fantasy series. Eventually I want to do like a top 10 list, and it's definitely going to be close to the top. Just depends on how well the author sticks to the landing on these last 2 books. Then I want to read The Woman in the Whale by Georgiana Max Brodsky, and this is a story inspired by Norse and Inuit mythology. It follows a young person who at first identifies as female, but throughout the story I believe they move to identify as more gender fluid. They are a hunter, but when they start to go through puberty and come of age, their gender starts to influence how they are perceived within their community. And I'm really excited for this one. It's a standalone fantasy. I love stories that involve Indigenous mythology. I was gifted this one via Audible, and I'm just really dying to check it out. Again, I like to read the books that I receive as soon as I can, and this one of course is set up north, and so I want to read it during those cold months, and I really hope it could be a favorite. It definitely has that potential given the fact that it really hits on a couple of things that are personal book buzzwords for at least myself. And last but definitely not least for fantasy, I am going to be reading Jade Legacy, the third and final book in the Greenbone Saga trilogy by Fonda Lee. I've been loving these urban fantasy stories that are very much inspired by Asian culture. They involve the use of these gems, these jades that give people abilities to enhance their martial arts. And this story is basically about clan wars between these warring families. And I find the stories to be so addictive. They read like dramas with twists and turns and backstabbing, and I just eat it all up. I'm currently rereading through the second book, Jade War, in preparation for this, and I'm just so excited to see how the trilogy is going to end. I've heard amazing things from early reviewers, and I have no doubt that she is going to nail the ending, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited. And finally, my last plan for the winter season is to start working through the Last Kingdom books by Bernard Cornwell, which, yes, are technically historical fiction, but I'm hoping that they'll scratch that similar feel to the fantasy stories that I like, because I do like a lot of historical epic fantasy. And I understand that this follows a Norseman who gets pulled into the story of how England came to be. I have watched the first season of The Last Kingdom. I probably want to do a rewatch of the show as I'm reading through the books. And this is just the first 2. I believe the series is, I want to say, 13 books long. We'll see how far I get into it. I'll basically read the books until I lose interest or until I finish it out. But I've heard really good things, at least about the early books, really good things about the later seasons of the TV show. And yeah, I'm excited to try it out. So a little bit different than what I normally read, but I thought I'd share with you, all my reading plans, and no reason not to hide this from you. So let me know if you actually want to see this show up in a review somewhere. So that is it for this video. I would love to hear down below, of the books I talked about, which ones are you most excited for me to check out and prioritize. I'll try to get to all of these, but things change. I don't guarantee it. So if you tell me a particular book is really good, if you say that I'm really gonna like something, I'm more likely to push it to the top of the TBR and get to it sooner than later. I would also love to hear, what are your high priority plans for the winter months? Are you, like me, gonna do a lot of rereading, or do you also pick out those cold winter books and kind of line up your reading with the season and temperature? I would love for you to stick around if you're new to my channel. I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, and fantasy. And if you enjoy these TBR videos, I'm going to keep them coming and do another one in the spring. So let me know with a thumbs up, dropping a comment down below, sharing this around online. And if you hit that little notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.